look, you can get player input in different things. In my opinion, I think
what temperature the steaks are, the medium or medium rare.
There you go. Absolutely.
Omelette station. What ingredients we need at the omelette station at the facility?
Yeah, that's been.
Welcome to Rogue Boys. Another week of basketball news. Pro from the States, NBL action, NBA action. Things heating up before Christmas. Pro, what's going on? Looks cold over there. On the opposite.
It's a little chilly. Spent 2 days in a high school gym watching this national high school tournament that had some of the best high school players in the country, boys and girls. So I went to 10 games on Friday, 10 games on Saturday. I am fucking wiped. But okay. I'll tell you, the high school landscape, Bogues, has changed dramatically. I mean, forget about all the video guys and stuff, all that stuff. But the runners for agents, it's an all-time high. Like,
well, explain what a runner is for the people out there.
Also, a runner is a guy who works, an intermediary who works for an agent that gets around high school kids to basically deliver them to the agent. It used to be the runner would take him for 4 or 5 years, take care of the kid one way or another, and then the agent will represent him going to the draft. Now with the NIL stuff, especially with the girl side, it's amazing all these people that are around players. So like they try to steer the kid to the age, the agent that they work for. They can't be certified agents. Now, I don't know because before all this NIL stuff and able to sign kids, in NIL deals in college, before like there were rules where runners didn't become real agents and take the tests and stuff because they didn't have the same rules that applied to them, being around kids. Yeah. So they don't really have a license to lose. Now, I got a couple of good friends that are runners, and they do a good job. And, look, it's a job, and it's pretty lucrative if you get the right kids. But, I mean, there are a lot of sketchy people. I'm like...
So how do you... So what, are they in those cities, and they just go to the high schools and say, hey, I'm John Smith?
They go to the events. Yeah, they go to the events. They'll talk to a parent in the stands. They'll take them to dinner. They'll talk about how much money they get the kid in NIL and all this other stuff. Okay. And then that's it. It's amazing. You used to see it a little bit, but it was very low key. Now there must have been 40 to 50 runners in the gym at the same time. Yeah. Wow. I mean, there was some big time players. Like there was. I mean, I got a chance to see Bogues. Then she'll probably be the #1 pick in the draft in about 4 years. She's a senior in high school. Elia Chavez out of Texas. She's been #1 in the country since she was a freshman. Man, she's good. 5'11", which is 6'3" to the girls' game, and just pulls up from 28 feet. Scores at will. Now she lost by 30 to the #1 freshman in the country named Sydney Thomas. She's 6'7", which is 7'1" to the girls' game, but she's going to be really good. So it was cool, but a lot of good players.
Do you think high school kids are getting paid these days? In some capacity?
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's no real penalty because is there rules against? Because with the NIL stuff now, I assume that you can be paid before you go to college these days, right?
You can. Now, certain states don't have it. Now, Texas, they're trying to change it, but Texas, you can't. That's why, a lot of these really big-time high school players are going to prep schools and boarding schools outside the state of Texas because legally they can't. Yeah, so, I've heard top prospects are getting upwards of $1 million, and I don't know how that sort of comes about. But the top couple of players in the country get close to $1 million with NIL deals and things like that. Panini, trading card, shoe company a little bit. It's probably the other types of companies that sponsor the kid. But it's an interesting ecosystem now. It's totally changed. Especially in the girl side. You expect it on the boy side because I've seen that for years. Money managers and things hanging around those kids. But the girl side, because of Caitlin Clark making a couple of mil, that girl Chavez, she's got to be the head coach at LSU was at her game. Probably 9 or 10 high major schools. She'll probably, I would assume, demand close to $1 million. I don't know the girls as much as the boys, but she'll probably get close to $1 million. Sat next to the mother and father, which actually seemed normal, which is a weird deal. But so now the agencies can make 20% of the girl side. So it's pretty lucrative to get in with these top 20 or 30 girls as well. So it's a pretty interesting deal, man.
The other interesting thing I heard from a friend of mine in the NBA, he was saying that in NBA agents now are almost taking no commission on max deals, which is insane. Especially these bigger agencies in Clutch and whatnot. They're trying to undercut the market heavily, take all the players, and they just charge a higher rate on marketing. So they might charge, instead of 15-20%, they might charge you 30-40% on your marketing, but they're luring guys over by saying we're not going to charge you commission on a supermax deal, which is insane. That's a lot of money on the table, but it's interesting times. And this is a guy that's in the know. Like it's if these big agencies start doing that, the smaller agencies just won't be able to compete on a commission. If they're not charging commission, so it makes things very, very interesting in that current climate for those that aren't familiar with how that all works.
But
Most NBA agents make anywhere between 2 to 4% on negotiating everything but your rookie deal. Your rookie deal's already set
they're
in stone for the most part,
but
but
they don't
everything
collect
else.
on it.
No, they don't collect on it. But
Yeah.
the next your first contract out of your rookie deal, and then obviously your super max guys, your Tatums, your Browns, these kind of guys. That's a lot of money. That's $800,000 on some of these deals in commission if it's a couple of percent.
I remember Antoine Walker. I forgot. I think it was David Falk. Maybe it was his agent, but I'm not sure. When he was negotiating his rookie extension, he basically, from what I was told him, say, "Look, you're not going to get anything out of this." Now, this is when he was making good money at Adidas and some other marketing deals. He goes, "Look, charge me 20% of the marketing, but you're not taking a dime, or I'm just going to go to somebody else." And with the rookie deals, like this is what a lot of fans don't know about. So the rookie deals that now are like first pick of the drafts around 10 million a year. A lot of the agents don't take anything from the rookie deal. They'll take 20% of the marketing, and they have to accrue a lot of expenses, travel expenses, taking care of the family, taking care of the kid, training expenses, which cost 10 or 15,000 a guy. And you got to carry these players for the first 5 years and they collect. I know a lot of big agencies that would basically just invest a lot of money in runners to hang out in the tunnel at NBA arenas where they would hit up players a year before their extension. So the first 2 years leave them alone, and then year 3, year 4, when they were going to be really big time players,
Mm.
try to vulture them from agencies, especially smaller agencies.
Yeah, it happened to
And
me.
then,
It
yeah,
happened to me. Yeah, it happened to me with my extension in Milwaukee. I was in the third or fourth year of my rookie deal, and I loved my agent and stayed with him my whole career. And I had a friend of a friend who was a Croatian background that, let's catch up. He's a good dude, and didn't really know what, I just thought it was a friend of a friend. So we'll go to dinner with him, and it ended up being a runner. Like he was trying to pour me off to another agent and, shitting on my agent, and you're going to lose money and this and that. And it's a brutal industry, right? Like, and a lot of times you don't know that they're a runner until they spring the question on you. And I was young and dumb and blind and trying to be a nice guy, and it was a friend of a friend. And you're kind of like, fuck, like he was just trying to steal, I called my agent straight away, and he explained to me how it all works. So it's a brutal industry, man. It's a brutal industry. And, but it just seems like, and to your point, those agents that invest all that money early on in the rookie deal and don't really get a return, and then these big agencies come and then take that athlete after you've invested 4 or 5 years at cost, really, if that, thinking, oh yeah, he's going to get a max deal, I'm good, and then he goes and signs it with someone else. That's what we're starting to see happen, and Clutch has been notorious for it,
Yeah, and a lot of agencies, Bogues, that people don't know, like the big time agencies that are probably carrying, I don't know, say they carry 400 million in contracts a year. So I mean that's a small number. I'm just going small. So say they're getting 2% on 400 million. So that's $8 million, right? So they get $8 million now to play with. Now they got to pay their people and do all that stuff, but that's not even counting marketing. So they could invest in all this money to recruit guys, and they basically got almost an unlimited budget. Imagine what Clutch has. I mean, Clutch would probably handle in, I would say, billion, a billion, almost $1 billion in contracts. I would say
Mhm.
roughly about 800 million to 1.2 billion, probably more. I'm just sort of throwing off the top of my head. So now they have all this money in their pot to recruit, to do whatever with. And with these small agencies, I knew a small agent that paid a kid that was a first round pick $100,000 just to get him for the draft. They got him, and 2 months later, already paid him, the moron, and 2 months later they fired him before the draft. So like as a small agent, you're barely making anything. You might have like 10 or 15 guys overseas. You might be collecting 100 grand a year tops, maybe 125,000 a year in commissions, and you've got these guys that are probably getting 8 to 15 to 20 million. The Bill Duffys, the Mark Bartlesteins, the Cluck Sports, the CAAs, with sports. And they've got all this money to sort of do what they need to do. Have 30 guys working for them, a bunch of runners, all these marketing people, and you're the small agent, just this mom and pop shop to go into like Northwestern. Maybe they got a couple of guys going overseas. Maybe you get lucky, get a guy, and then I mean it's almost inevitable you're going to get them stolen. So it's an interesting business. I've read a couple of books on agents. One was A Shark Never Sleeps by a football agent, Drew Rosenhaus. And I mean, it's unbelievable how these different sports, how the sports agencies are now starting at, it used to start at 14, 15, 16 years old. It's probably starting at 12, 13 years old now. It's a pretty interesting deal.
And it's somewhat, I mean, you have your agent licenses, just to finish this off.
Mhm.
It's somewhat an unregulated, wild west industry. I mean, there's just,
Yeah.
like you said, you got runners, there's ways to manipulate everything. Most players associations and leagues have licenses where you go to a bullshit 1-day course and then have your license. And you can obviously, if you lose your license, then you're fucked. You can't represent a player. You can't
Right.
negotiate. That ever rarely happens. You ever really see licenses moving
It's
and get
hard.
taken away. And if they are taken away, they just move them on to someone else in the agency that does a deal then. But yeah, it's just it's car salesmen of the 80s and 90s, right? Like it's that kind of stuff, where used car salesmen, sorry. So pretty interesting. Let's move on to the NBA stuff. Team of the week, who you got?
Dallas Mavericks, Bogues.
Okay.
Look, yeah, I looked at it. I looked at Milwaukee. I looked at Memphis. I looked at, a lot of teams that are winning a bunch of these games in a row. And then I looked at strength of schedule, and I actually did some homework this week, folks. And
Nice.
you look, Atlanta and Utah, they beat, but they beat New York in the middle of that. I think they're playing well. No Luka Doncic, he's been out with an injury. I mean, Kyrie Irving's been playing really well. In the rest of the role, the role players and things for them. I mean, they've been playing well, and this is without Luka. And this is you've been talking about it with other teams about playing without other players and other stars and things like that, and how do you react, and how you're going to go from there. And look, there's been games where Najee Marshall would step up. There was games where Jaden Hardy would step up. Obviously Kyrie playing at an all-time level. I mean, got to give Kyrie a lot of credit. The guy's a point guard, shooting as many shots as he's shooting, and he's shooting 50% from the field, 46.6 from three, 87.9 from the line. The guy's playing really well. He's played in 95% of his games. You could, look, sometimes we get on him, for good reason. I think in the last couple of years he's been really good, and just playing it, just running the team, being any role that you need him to play, he's going to play. And look, when he's got to play with Luka, plays at a high level. When if Luka's out, he steps up. Give him a lot of credit. Those guys are playing really well. And like I said, their bench has been playing well and giving him some good minutes. I think I saw that Klay Thompson missed his first game of the season, but
Yeah.
yeah, I got to give him a lot of credit there.
Najee Marshall's been good for him too. I mean,
Yeah,
been
Najee
pretty
Marshall.
solid for him.
Yeah, and he started off a little bit slow, but he's been playing really well. Derek Lively's been giving him really good minutes to start in five. Yeah, it's been a fun team to watch. I think Spencer Dinwiddie actually broke out of his slump. He actually had a good game this
Yeah.
week. So I think they're a good team. And the season's so long. That's the thing. We talk about Milwaukee, and look, they've been playing great. I think, they elevated pretty high as far as in the standings. Philly's still in the dumper, but Dallas is a team that was struggling. I think they were 10th a week or two ago. Now they're finding themselves, I think, they're 4th or 5th in the West, playing well. Only about 3.5 games out of first. There's a lot of time left to sort of maneuver through, and look, Luka's going to come back soon, and yeah, I think they're a team that's fun. They move the ball. They played it. They play for each other. They support each other. They're a fun team. I wouldn't put a crown on them for sure. Obviously, with Boston and Oklahoma, but I think that they're at a level where you could at least expect to see them in the conference final.
Yeah, they were on my list. I had the Celtics, who look like they're in in a scrap right now with Cleveland. Cleveland up 1 with 10 seconds left. Cleveland shooting 2 free throws, so playing the foul game. I had Boston in there for notables. I had the Magic. They had a really good week playing solid basketball. They remind me a lot of a early 2000s Eastern Conference team. They just grind you down. They like to play in the 90s and the 100s. They're really good defensively. The Grizzlies I had in there as well. Had the Atlanta Hawks, but I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks just because they've shown some fight. They were 14th or 13th a couple of weeks ago. We were on them. Everyone was on them. And they've shown some ticker. They've shown some heart. Like their schedule wasn't the easiest. It wasn't super tough, but they beat Houston, they beat the Bulls, they beat Indiana, they beat Charlotte, they beat Miami, and then they beat Washington. But Miami's a good win. Indiana's up and down, but that's a good win, and Houston's a good win. So 3 good wins in there, and they took care of 3 they had to win. A tough loss to Charlotte before that, but they've won 6 straight, and they've won 8 of their last 9. So they're playing good basketball. Giannis is just having we spoke about it last week as well. His numbers are better than his MVP year. Does he win it? Who knows? But he's been phenomenal. So I just like to see teams that are showing some ticker, especially when they start out pretty poorly, and they're back in the mix. They're like you said, they're in 6th spot. They're 10-9, and they're playing some decent basketball. Whereas you look at someone like Philly, that's where Philly should be. Philly should be grinding back to try to get up there, but they're 4-14. So I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks, bro.
Yeah, look, folks, they're waiting on Middleton to come back. We've been talking about it. It was really hard to at first when they're in when they're 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th in the conference, and to sort of move up and maneuver. But people don't understand how long this season is. And look, you don't want to be where Philly is now, which they still have time to maneuver out. But look, Middleton's been out. They've been a little bit funky. The bench, has been up and down. They've been trying to find some type of middle ground, some type of consistency with the team. Giannis has been on a tear this week. I think he had the first 40-point triple-double of his career. And they've been playing well. Look, that's why I don't really like to jump to conclusions on teams early. Now it's easy to jump on Philly, but even Milwaukee, look, they just until their whole team is back, unless Middleton was going to be out for the year, that's another thing. But if that's going to be a nagging thing, that he could be, but he could come back in the lineup and play a lot of minutes and play, through the stretch of the season, that you sort of jump the brakes on sort of throwing our team off the cliff. They played well. Look, they've won some games. They're putting some win streaks together, and I think that. With Giannis and Dame, you're always in it. If their bench could sort of step up, I like their bench, but they just got to step up and give them a little bit more scoring. Pat Connaughton, Prince, Portis always is a gamer. I like AJ Green, shooter. But the bench has got to produce and give them a little bit of a cushion. To be able to come in, when those starters sit out and really give something. Gary Trent Jr. has been up and down. He's been up and down, for the last couple of years. He hasn't really been super consistent. But look, Milwaukee's a team that, I think that if you could finish in the top 3, top 4 in the East, you'll be good. Look, they're 6.5 out. I think they could definitely play for that 3rd, 4th spot. They could go all the way up to to 2, or I don't think they'll overtake the Celtics, but if they could get in that top 4, top 3, situation come playoff time, they'll be good. But yeah, I mean, and Middleton again, they're not a great defensive team, but with Middleton, they could outscore people and then just sort of keep the defense manageable and see what they can do. But yeah, good pick.
Bit of fight. Bit of fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've shown some balls. They've haven't given up, and Giannis is a proud kind of superstar that doesn't want to go out like that, especially waste the season off to go on the lottery. So it's just good to see him bounce back. And like we've said, it's just lucky they're in the East because Philly are 2.5 or 3 games behind making the play-in, as bad as they've been, which is wild. So it's a 3-game win streak, and all of a sudden you're in the mix, even though you're 4-14 at the minute, which is just absolutely wild. You look at the West, and 11th is 6 games behind making a play-in. So pretty wild stat there. My team of the week team of this week, I'm going to go with Sacramento. I think they've kind of flown under the radar of how inconsistent and poor they've been. I think Golden State get an honorable mention as well. They've lost 4 straight to some teams they probably should have beaten, but no one really talks about Sacramento because a couple of seasons ago they had that finally broke the the glass ceiling they had and made the playoffs, and then last season was a letdown again and wasn't great for them. And now this season is just not looking good. They're 9-11. They're 3-7 in their last 10, and it looks clunky. It just doesn't look like that roster is fitting well together. DeRozan and Sabonis and Herter and Fox. I mean, Fox is having a decent season. The DeRozan acquisition I always question because I think you need, Aaron Fox isn't known to be a three-point shooter. He had that game the other night where he had, was it 50 or whatever he scored, knocked some threes down, but that's not he doesn't want to go to his three ball en masse, right? He'll take 3 or 4 of them a night, but that's about it. And then DeRozan's kind of similar, so it takes away from De'Aaron's game a little bit because you just don't have enough shooting out on that perimeter at times. But they went down to they lost to Portland, so that's your rule pro. They lost to Portland last game. If you lose to Portland, you get team of the week. They beat Minnesota in a close one, and then they lost 4 straight to Atlanta, the Clippers, Brooklyn, and OKC. So some winnable games in there. If they want to do anything serious this season, they should at least get Atlanta and Brooklyn and Portland and be 3-3 in the last 6. But they've been pretty poor. It just doesn't look good. And I know Mike Brown is a tough coach, so he'll be on him. I just wonder if it gets to a point where they start tuning out. If he's just too wild on him. Mike Brown can be known as a disciplinarian and a guy that's really in your face and in your grill. So I've got Sack in there for that reason.
Yeah, Bogues, you would have thought with their roster they've done pretty well. Last year they did pretty well. I mean, not a lot of playoff success, but they put some good things together. They lost Harrison Barnes. He replaced him with DeMar DeRozan, which you would think on some level will be an upgrade as far as scoring and things of that nature. But it's tough. It's tough when you have Fox who needs the ball, Sabonis needs the ball. You would expect Herter and Murray to sort of stretch the floor and do some things for him. And then you got Monk coming on the second unit. Their bench isn't superb. Their bench isn't super as far as scoring is concerned. After Monk, you got like Keon Ellis and Trey Lyles, and you don't really have a lot coming off the bench to sort of help. But they've been clunky. It's not a great start for them. Not a great start. I think they're sitting in 12th, and yeah, it's DeRozan. Look, I like DeRozan. He plays well, but when you have a guard that's dribble heavy and ISO heavy, it's hard to get multiple guys. It's different if you have 2 point guards that can handle the ball, so break you down, shoot the ball, stretch the floor, get to the rim, and then you have these other role players sort of fitting in. They don't really have that here, but you would expect a little bit more. Defensively, I don't think they're great with rim protecting. Sabonis is more of a rebounder, screen setter, scorer. ISO guy could pass out of the post, but defensively is where I sort of worry about these guys. But yeah, they've been very clunky as of late. I think they'll give it the year and figure things out and see if they can make any changes to the roster. Look, the one good thing they got, Bogues, is they've got assets they can move. They've got assets they can move to sort of acquire other players if need be. Obviously, Sabonis and Fox, you would think that they're pretty safe. DeRozan could be traded, even though you probably don't want to trade a guy that you just signed in the summer. So he'll probably stay. But you're probably gonna be thinking about Keegan Murray moving, Herter moving, even a Malik Monk type moving to try to acquire another asset. But again, it's early. They're
They're in the
sort
mix.
of
They're
not.
9-11.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other interesting one is they brought in Crowder off the street and they've benched Herter for it. Herter's
Yeah.
played 6 minutes last game, 13 the night before. They brought Crowder in and started him straight away. So that kind of tells you Mike Brown's not afraid, and he obviously wants some defense in that starting lineup, as you said.
Yeah, they need defense, especially perimeter defense. Fox isn't a defender. Herter's not a defender. DeRozan will give you some effort, but he's really not a defender. They're scorers, but you need, especially when you're going through a losing streak, you need some guys who's going to grind you out, who's going to be able to, guard people. Even though they took him off the couch, he's really hasn't played a full NBA season in a couple of years. He's played up and down with some teams, could sign late, but it's impressive to be able to come in there and start, without really, going through training camp or anything like that, and they sign you off the couch there. So, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic going on in Sacramento. So, that's a tough one. I don't know. I was gonna do Sacramento. I was actually gonna do Cleveland. You lose to Atlanta twice in a row. I'd probably go Golden State. Although, it's funny. I think they were my team of the week last week, and now they're my team of the week.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
team of the week was, you know, your team of the week was Dallas, and I take them as my strong team. Look, I mean, sometimes you're grasping at straws at these things. A team has a bad week, but that's what the award is, so we'll give it. Look, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but losing 4 in a row, they're too good not to. They're good. They're too good to be doing that. They're losing 4 in a row. I mean, that's a team. Look,
Spurs and Brooklyn were the big ones, right? Like Spurs, they lose to Spurs by 10, they lose to Brooklyn by 8. They're the ones you got to get. Then they lose to OKC by 4, close game, and they lose to Phoenix, who was somewhat healthy. So, I agree.
And with this, look, with the team of the week deal, I can't really ever do Washington. They're not really trying to win. They're trying to compete, but they're not trying to win. So it's really, you can't really go with them. And then, these teams that lose all the time, you try to you try to go with the teams that are sort of the top 8 or 9 that are struggling. And I think they'll get out of it. They lost 4 in a row. They'll figure some things out. But they had Steph too. So it's not like they're Philly and all their stars were gone. You have Steph. You have Steph and Wiggins and Draymond, and you have your team in Buddy Hield and those guys and Kuminga, and you lose 4 in a row, especially to those teams. You got to beat San Antonio. You got to beat Brooklyn. But yeah, they got to snap out of it.
They didn't start very well, so they came out like a cannon. It'll be interesting to see if they can sustain and where they finish. I mean, like I said, I think they'll be a playoff team. I just don't know if they're championship worthy yet. I still don't think they're deep enough to go to a championship, but they've been playing really well. As far as your bottom teams not being the weak team ever, I agree. Unless if you get to 20, Washington Wizards, if you get to 20 losses in a row, which could happen, they're at 14 at the moment, then you get the nod. That's the rule. With those shitty teams, Utah, New Orleans, Portland, Washington, maybe Toronto and Charlotte, they're the teams that if you get into double digits to the 20s, then we're giving you the nod. But and we'll see where Philly goes. But yeah, it is hard. It's wild. It's just so wild how week to week it's just gone. Like you said, the teams have had shitty weeks and they bounce back and go 4 straight, and we've seen it in both conferences. So, and that's kind of cool as a fan. If you're a neutral fan watching, you kind of don't know who's what's where, and it kind of keeps the season close for the most part.
I'll tell you what, this year's it seems like it's getting like that the last 3 or 4 years. This league is really hard to figure out. It's you think you have your thumb on it. You're like, all right, I sort of know these players, I know these teams, and then they'll do something like that, and you're like, I never even saw it coming. This player that you might see in college for the draft, he'll just be okay. He'll be dynamic and be great. And then these players that you're like, oh, he's a guaranteed gamer in the NBA, and it doesn't do anything. Or there's teams that are like, oh wow, they're gonna, they'll lose 2 games a month if that, and then they'll go out and lose like 4 straight. In sort of the opposite as well. It's a weird thing to figure out sometimes, but you've been around it. Look, like, sometimes, players are banged up, the travel, the schedule. Somebody might be in a bad mood, might be close to Christmas, and they got 20 people home, staying with them, and it just, they're out late. They go to Miami, that Miami trip where, you go out late.
Yeah.
It's tough. You never know what the NBA schedule meant. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, and that's why the betting agencies love the NBA. They make a lot of money from it because it's impossible. It's very, very hard to pick. Even the gurus, their room for error is so small now. So, all right, moving on. Anthony Edwards calls out his team. Quote: "We got to start doing what our coaches say. We always have something to say back." And also mentioned that their home fans booing them is super disrespectful. Probably a bit early. Look, I get their performances haven't been great, but for the fans to be booing already is maybe a little early. Come on, you're not the Knicks. You're the Timberwolves. Have some respect. But the whole we got to start doing what the coaches say. We always have something to say back. That starts with coaching to an extent. In my estimate, I think you've been part of teams. I've been part of teams. When there's too many chefs spoil the broth. When you got too much player input's great, and that's a big catch cry today. As you know, pro player input, player communication. You got to go and touch and feel everyone, make sure everyone's okay mentally and all that kind of shit. But there comes a point where it's too much, and there's too much input. And I've been around coaches that didn't want to upset one player on the roster. Well, let me give you a tip. If you want to be a pro coach, you're going to have 4 or 5 guys that fucking hate you. Like, it's just the reality of it. You got a roster of 15. 5 guys aren't playing generally, and they think they should be playing. Pro always talks about, there's confidence and then there's delusion. There's 5 guys on that roster that probably think they should be starting that aren't. They're going to hate. So, like, you can't keep everyone happy when you have guys, it might be a coverage. It might be, for Edwards' example, it might be, hey, we're doing this on the pick and roll. And then player X says, oh, why don't we do this? And then player Y says, no, I like this better. But the coaches said, we're doing this, let's try this. And then when they try it, they're not fully invested and doing it as hard as they can because it's not a coverage that they like. Like, let's say you're Rudy, I want to be near the basket, I don't want to be. So then they're not really giving their full effort to see if it works, right? That's what I'm hearing from that. And that's a huge concern when you have a lot of voices that are giving input, bro.
Yeah, it was confusing to me a little bit what he was saying because you can go with that end of it about, player input, or the coaches are saying, look, we're doing this in the game coverage wise, or they call it a play or they call it a coverage. They just won't do it. And they make their own thing up. Now I've seen that happen in that on the other end.
Yep.
Now, what you're talking about, I agree. You can't have it. Look, you could talk to players and look, I'm you know me, I've been around, you've been around me when you were in Dallas. Like I'm a huge player guy. And, I want to get the pulse of the team. I want to talk it out. I want to see what they're thinking, give them the truth back, have dialogue, have conversation. That's always good. Now, the head coach part in trying to take all this input from players, look, you're paid to do a job. Look, you can get player input in different things. In my opinion, I think getting player input about if you're 50-50, if you're gonna practice on the road a certain day or get a day off, or listen to music before or during a practice or what have you, like get some input like that. Okay, great. As far as
what
your
temperature
game
the
plan,
steaks are, if they're medium or medium rare.
there you go. Absolutely.
Omelet station. What ingredients we need at the omelet station at the facility?
Yeah, that's been trust me, that's been a long talked about thing sometimes. And I agree, look, get it from there and give them that. But I think when you're going in a war and you're preparing for a team and you've got a certain coverage in mind, or you got a certain scheme offensively you want to run, that's what you do. As far as the player deal, not listening to what coaches are saying. Now, if I'm coming up and saying, look, we're going to show in the pick and roll, and then you just go out and drop, or hey, we're going to pull over on the weak side, or you don't look, and that's up to you as not being a professional. Look, you get paid astronomical amounts of money from top to bottom to be in this league. You get basically everything that you want. All they ask you in return is to be in shape, be prepared, and compete, and just act like a professional. And acting like a professional, outside of being on time and getting your work in and all that stuff, that's fine. And there's different definitions of that and instances of that. The biggest thing is whatever your coach getting out of that huddle or getting out of that players meeting, coaches meeting, getting out of that film session. This is what we're going to do, and everybody's got to be on the same page supporting it, regardless if you like it, regardless if you don't. You get it back tenfold with, your salary, you travel in luxury, you get whatever you want. Everybody, wants to make you happy. But in that 48 minutes in a game, in that 2-hour practice, you have to do what your coach tells you. And that's, I don't care if I really like the coach or hated the coach working for him. I understood that going forward too. That's what the guy wants you to do. We got to do it regardless of what you think is right or wrong. That's not your job. Your job is to get out there and produce and help the team win. And that's sort of what it sounded like he was saying, that they're basically doing what they want instead of what the coaches want us to do. And that's where you get in trouble. And look, they are playing great. It's been clunky. They've had moments where they've been okay. And then you throw in this trade and it's funky. But when you get a bunch of guys doing what they want to do, it's a recipe for disaster for sure.
Currently 9-10 and 11th. They're a game out. The Spurs are in 10. Clippers are in 9. So, yeah, look, I commend Edwards. Also went on to say, put a lot of the blame on himself. He's trying to figure out how to, now that he's a leader, he's looked upon. How does he navigate things? How does he do things? How does he push buttons? So you respect that he's put himself out there as well. But, this was always, and this has always been an issue. I mean, the whole Rudy Randall thing, Edwards is a fiery guy. They have some balancing, calming veterans like Conley and DiVincenzo that I hope can really, have a bit more input within the playing group. But yeah, you just got to, when there's too much input sometimes, I've been around one coach I had in my career, I won't name who it was, could have been NBA, could have been NBL, but he wanted to please everybody. And I remember we got our asses kicked in a playoff game, and we're going into the next game, and there was a player that was killing us, and then the guy guarding him wanted to change the coverage to something different because he didn't want to get 30 dropped on him, but it wasn't going to help the team. And then we tried that, and then we tried this, and then literally, 45 minutes later, discussing this coverage at a practice. So, that was a walkthrough towards the end of a session that took a session from an hour and a half to 3 hours. And at the end of it, we had no resolution. And we go into that game like the guard still wants to do this, the big still trying to do this, the off-ball guys are doing this, and you're just like, holy fuck. And we got lit up, we lost. Out and straight said, see you later. But that's where you got to be real careful. You want player input, but when it's nut cutting time, this is our scout, this is what we're going to do. You can have a player say, oh, do you think I should do this? Or how should I, should I open up my stand? No problem with that. Trying to get some dialogue or some tips on how to be in a perfect coverage for the coach. But you don't want to be like, I think we should do this. And then someone else says, well, it's better if we do this. And that's just a recipe for disaster. And then you tenfold that by having a coverage, and then one guy doesn't want to do it or two guys don't want to do it. It's just like, and that's bad teams, right? Like that's what you see. So we'll be interested to see how they bounce back, but they're in it a little bit culturally. The Pelicans they're not tanking yet on record. I don't know if anyone's told their players, but they're 4-17. They've lost 8 straight. They got a bunch of injuries, but look, even when healthy, this roster, they've just got contradicting talent on this roster that just, you got Murray, McCollum, then you got, Zion, who needs open floor and space. You got Ingram, who wants the ball, and it's just a weird mix of a roster they've put together. Herb Jones, really good defender, but they've got fast-paced guys, they've got slower half-court guys that don't want to play fast. It just doesn't look good, even if they were healthy. Zion's hurt again. Hearing that hamstring is just no good. I mean, it all comes down to weight for him. I think he's just so powerful and explosive that, if he's pushing 300 pounds, 125, 130 kilos for the Australians, that's a lot of torque going through your muscles, your quads, your hamstrings. So it's no surprise that he has those. I think he needs to get down to a 260, 120-ish, somewhere around there. Willie, I don't think so. Ingram turned down an extension from New Orleans. He wants the max. Turned down a trade or declined a trade to Utah because Ingram would not commit to an extension that was below the max. I don't think he gets the max from the people I've spoke to, Pro. I like Ingram. I've liked him as a teammate. I think he's a pretty good professional business guy. Likes to just get in and get his job done and play hard. But I don't think the max is out there for him. And on top of that, you finish it off with Ingram and Zion both firing their agents. Ingram has gone a clutch, shocker, which is very interesting because I don't think he'd like the whole LeBron thing and all that with the Lakers. But anyway, and then Zion hasn't mentioned who he's signing with, because I think you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can hire another agent, as per
15 days.
15 days. So Zion's only just fired him, but I would assume that's probably going to be clutch as well, if I was guessing, man.
Yeah, I mean, especially if those sort of special rules that you were talking about, not signing, I mean, not
No commission.
not offering the commission on the contract. But who knows? I mean, look, they're a mess right now. I mean, they did start off the year with a lot of injuries. The Murray Jones has been out all year. I think he played a couple of games and he's been out for a while. Trey Murphy was out for a while, and they just don't have any sort of togetherness yet. Because those guys haven't played. But it's one thing about being a couple of games under 500. Now they're only about 5 or 6 games out of 10. But I mean, it's not looking great. I've never been a huge Zion fan. Look, he's a talented guy in his own respect. He could get you points, but the weight always an issue. The weight always an issue. The position, what do you play him at? You said 5. A lot of people said 5. I get it. Play him at 5, but now you're losing shot block and you're losing shooting. You're losing some things. He's just not someone you could rely on. Can't really handle the ball. He's this enigma you throw out there that could just get to the rim, make some fantastic plays, but he sort of messes up your spacing. He messes up a lot of things, with your team. Defensively, where do you really play him? It's just
And
tough.
that's where their roster construction is bad, because you got to,
Yeah.
you got to try to find a five then that, a Brook Lopez type. You got to find that something that you can put next to Zion that then negates his 3-point shooting, that gives you size to protect the rim and can spread the floor. They're becoming more and more common as we go. Al Horford types, those kind of guys. You got to find someone like that. Because the Valanciunas shit was like that made no sense. Valanciunas, even though he's shooting the 3-ball a little bit more, but it's not his strength. You got two brutes down there. It just doesn't work. Cleveland somewhat make it work because those guys are super athletic and long and can move around the court. But that's where like I said, the roster construction is. I think a priority was for them. Okay, Murray, good pickup, decent player, but I think more importantly, it was a big that could shoot the ball from 3 and protect the rim. That's what they should have went after. But that's what. Yeah, I just, and then you factor in New Orleans as a city, the arena, the fans. It's shitty. No one's going.
Not a fan. No.
It's probably the cheapest product in the NBA as far as a ticket. Very easy to get a ticket there. Always half empty. I just wonder if there comes a time where they sell and move and go elsewhere, because it's all in all, it's and look, their owner doesn't spend. Their owner's notorious for staying under that luxury tax, like well under it. The valuation of his investment's gone up 5-6x, but still doesn't want to go luxury tax, which is his prerogative. So then you're just stuck in that 7-8 seed is a championship for us. We're happy with that. Well, that's how Milwaukee was when I first got there, right? It was like, hey, get a playoff stint. We're happy with that.
I think it's a woman who owns the team. I think it's the original owner passed away, and it's the wife. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
She owns the football team too, right?
Yeah, I think that's the case. But
Gail Benson.
Gail Benson, yep.
There you go. Yeah, it's just a weird deal. In general, it's just the roster. It's clunky, but then again, they had a little bit of success last year. Some of the way they were playing. Not a lot of playoff success, but they had a little bit of success. Zion played at a high level. Ingram was playing great. McCollum. I think the Murray fit isn't great. Again, not having a true point guard. He wants to score and he's got the ball in his hands. McCollum and Ingram and Zion. As far as the Zion deal too, no, let's not forget his deal in the last 3 years of his contract now is non-guaranteed because he didn't play in a certain amount of percentage of games. Remember they had that weight clause as well as a game clause. I think I read somewhere where his contract's not guaranteed now in the last 3. KOB could check that if you want, but I'm almost positive I read that in the last day or two. It's interesting. I think that Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles was talking about it on their podcast too, about the weight thing. And look, he's not a player that you can rely on. He's he's not at a high level as Embiid, but it's almost the same deal. You can't rely on him to play a lot of games. He's going to be hurt a bunch. He's not a big drama kind of guy, but he sort of is. The whole weight thing, firing people, trainers that he works with. And he's got to get serious about his career. He's got to get serious about his weight. He's got to be serious about where he's going with this thing. Because I'm telling you, after this contract, he might be a guy that only signs for 2 years at a time. Like, how can you put a lot of money into him? Yeah,
I wouldn't give him 4 or 5 years. No chance. No chance in hell. Yeah,
to me, he's not
short-term big number. Some team out there will give him a big number for a year or two, but it's a huge risk.
So now look, I mean, he's 6'6". He's an unbelievable athlete, but he's 6'6". He can't stay healthy. He's got a lot of skill set deficiency in his game, and he can't be in shape. He's never in shape. Now, I guess he was in shape in the off season or whatever. I don't know. It's like
that's every training camp, bro. It's
it's like people see a Bigfoot.
He's in great shape. Yeah, 3 days of pre-training camp. He's dunking on everyone, and then can't walk for a week. And the coach is like, "Whoa, like he's killing it. He's doing so well." And then he's just got that body. I feel he just needs to be leaner. Like it comes down to that. Like he's just got so much power going through those legs, and with his vertical and the way he explodes, he's just a hamstring and a quad away every other game, man. You're just like, if you could just get to 260, 270. And be out there 30 minutes a night, you help your team. When you compare him to Embiid, at least Embiid's got to a conference finals. Like New Orleans, what was their best first round and out twice maybe under him, and he was hurt that 1 year, right? Like he didn't play in that where they pushed. Was it Phoenix? They pushed to 6 or 7. couple of years ago. I don't think he played in that series. So it's
Folks,
interesting. A lot of talent, but what do you do with it?
I'll give you our first fact or fake news. Fact or fake news. You have a better chance of seeing Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster pounding beers in a club at 2 a.m. versus Zion Williamson being in shape during the NBA season. Fact or fake news. I mean, it's crazy.
We haven't seen it. Yeah, we haven't seen it.
No, we haven't seen it.
And it's frustrating. This isn't like so much as just shitting on him for his weight issues. You want to see him at peak physical condition to like just coming down, dunking on people and taking games over. That's what I want to see. And he's shown stints of it.
Good kid, always smiling. No one ever says a awful thing about him. He just can't stay in shape. And there's gonna come a time where teams are just gonna say, I had enough. Like, you gotta take the reins of your professional career. And that's the thing about these players. They think that it's gonna last forever and they're gonna be at this high level forever where everyone's gonna be fawning on them, fawning all over them, $300 million contracts. At some point, and look, Joel Embiid's sort of dealing with that now, where look, he's at a high MVP level, even though he's had his issues. But people are gonna bet on Embiid a little bit more than they're gonna bet on Zion, because Zion can't forget about winning a race. He can't get to the starting block. He's gotta be. You know what? I gotta get in shape. I told you there's this great movie that I used to watch when I was a kid. Shocker. It's called Fatso with Dom DeLuise. Dom DeLuise, guy couldn't stay in shape. He went to like all his friends were dying of heart attacks and stuff because Italians, they eat. So they give him this list of food he can't eat. He's got this support group that like stops him from eating, right? So one time he had all this problem about eating. They came over, they chained all his cupboards, and they had him like all these fat people just chained these cupboards and said, you're not gonna eat. And his brother had the key. Well, they fucking got the gun to the fucking brother's head. They tried to stop him from eating. They got the key. They ripped the fucking the cupboards out. They ate all the food. They needed guys he needs like security, not to protect him from people attacking him. He needs to be in a padded room where he can't get the food. Seriously, he needs to take initiative with this thing, and he needs to take control of it, because I'm guarantee you this: after this deal, he will not get more than 3 years. He will not.
It'd be a 2+1. It'd probably be a 2+. I wouldn't even give him 3. I'd give him 1+1 or 2. A 2 as a half guarantee or something like that. But I mean, there might be a small market team that just takes the risk. But you've got so much evidence that it's just not going to work. And there's so many talents. Eddie Curry was an immense talent. Like, I used to hate guarding him when he was with the Knicks. Big physical body, 80s way out of the league. Sweetney was another one. I worked out with him pre-draft, and he was so talented, man. People don't realize he had really nice touch for a big guy. Couldn't keep his weight down, and you're like, so much talent just wasted.
Eddie Curry, I had him in Chicago with Tim Grover, and Eddie Curry offensively was one of the most gifted centers I've ever seen. He was better than Dwight Howard. Wasn't the rebounder that Dwight Howard was, but offensively he was 20 times better. And he had all the ability in the world. But again, soft spot for eating, not staying in shape. But he's the best. He's the best guy ever. Great story. Great story.
Yeah, he was tough. He was tough, and I remember in that Knicks year, there was that Thomas year where it seems like they signed every hot-headed dude in the NBA that 1 to 2 years.
They traded for him. They traded for him. They traded for him from Chicago. Great story. So he gained some weight over a weekend, eating nothing but pancakes and drinking Kool-Aid. Right. So at that year, and I would bust his balls for it all summer. So when he played against the Celtics, the Bulls, I had the ball boys bring in. I got him a gallon of Bisquick and a thing of Kool-Aid, and I put it in his locker. And he came out fucking chasing me around around the Boston Garden. But no, Eddie Curry, guys like that, it's tough, because the food is such a look. Speaking from experience, it's hard to say no, man. It's hard to say no, dude, and I'm gonna admit it. But for players like the Michael Sweetney's award, but Eddie Curry should be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not even lying. I mean, the guy could do somersaults. He can get up and do some athletic things that I've never seen many centers in the league ever do. But he just couldn't stay on the floor. He couldn't stay in shape. He couldn't stay healthy like that. He could stay healthy, but he couldn't stay in shape, and it's a shame. And Zion, look, again, he's a great kid. If he wasn't a great kid, if he was getting in trouble all the time, I'd be like, fuck him. But this guy is a great kid. Seems like it, and
He's
just
personable as
can't
well.
stay healthy. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's interesting to watch that space. And then Brooklyn, we don't have to get into this one, but they're basically, it's known around the league, everyone on their roster is available, as long as they don't have to take back big money. So meaning they don't have to take back any long-term contracts. So a short-term burn for this season, maybe an expiring for some of the young assets they would do, but they're fire sailing. And then interesting one on Trae Young, Pro. So the Atlanta Hawks were fined $100,000 for holding Trae Young out of an NBA Cup game. And when you read into this, it's pretty interesting. They listed him on their injury report that night as out because of tendonitis in his right Achilles. They ended up winning the game, which is irrelevant. The issue the NBA said was the Hawks were in violation of the league's player participation policy, which focuses primarily on what the league defines as star players, a group that Young would qualify for since he was an all-star selection last season. By league rule, unless a team demonstrates an approved reason for a star player not to participate in a game, it must have the star players for all national television and NBA in-season tournament games. And this is the part that's interesting, Pro. Following an investigation, including a review by an independent physician, the NBA determined the Hawks held Young out of a game that he could have played in under the medical standard in the policy. The organization's conduct violated the policy, which is intended to promote participation in the NBA's regular season. So how does that work, Pro? So they just send out an independent person that, he puts him through drills? I mean, is this just not ripe to be? I don't understand how you do it. I don't understand what an independent person does. They come with a little hammer and they tap your knee. Your joints working. It's like what determines? The age old my lower back. Like how the fuck are you going to be? For those playing at home, you can't really diagnose lower back issues. As I know, sometimes all my scans showed up fine and I had back spasms. It's like fuck. I don't know what's going on. So a lot of players sometimes can use that as an excuse because you can't see it. So I don't understand how they do that. I like the NBA is, being kind of somewhat progressive on NBA Cup games that are televised because they know they're eating a shit sandwich with the TV ratings and whatnot. But on the flip side, you're like, an independent medical person comes out to your facility and says that, I think he could have played. What happens if they say, I think he can play, and then he plays and hurts himself? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of shit that can happen.
And Bogues, this is where it gets a little dicey. Look, everybody wants these guys to play, but if you're looking at it on the other end of things, where you're trying to enforce them playing, and then they get hurt, then they could always sue you and say, "Look, I didn't want to play, but I had to because I had to, live up to the standard or what have you, and then I got hurt, and now where are you?" I mean, you're in my opinion, opening yourself up to huge lawsuits. You got this independent commissioner, independent doctor coming in to sort of test the guy. I don't know. Look, it's tough, man. I understand the NBA's, the NBA's taking a lot of flack. Look, I mean, everywhere you look, people are saying that the NBA's getting to be unwatchable, the players not playing. There's a lot of things going on in the NBA, even though they're worth, the NBA's worth more than ever in their, $8 billion plus, basketball related income, as far as what's coming into the league. But it is a little interesting when the league is now bringing in independent people because of the fact that, look, you've got, and look, a lot of these teams do play with it a little bit and they scam it up as far as guys not playing. But it's really tough when you're forcing these guys to play or you're making this assessment. Like, that's one thing it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, to assess if a guy's going to play or not, or they should play or not, and they're healthy up to that standard. And yeah, I mean, that's where you're getting in a little bit of dicey area. But look, the NBA's, the NBA has said in the last year or so they're really cracking down on this stuff, but it does get you.
On. So they theoretically, the way to manipulate it is Trae Young starts a game, plays a minute, and limps off. Like it's Then what? Then what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like it's a tough one, and I think there's no happy medium there because you can manipulate it and lie. So
But the problem is too, where you lie into that, Bogues, is their stats get affected big time by it. If you're doing this 4 or
Yeah.
5 times a year with a guy, I mean, now you're playing a game where you're not scoring any points and you played, and that's in another game, yet your stats get reflected on the downward. Now, of course, there's 82 games in a year, and if you play five, if that happens 4 or 5
Yeah, it's
times,
fair enough.
it's not going to be that bad. But yeah, I
No,
mean,
they
there's
won't do
no,
it. Stat chasers won't like that. Yeah, stat chasers
no,
won't like that.
there's no perfect way.
Yeah, so I think it'll be back. We'll see a lot. Someone will have something, and it'll just be back spasms. We're going to see a lot more back spasms. All right, useful and useless stats. Let's get through. We're just on an hour here. Useful and useless. Josh Hart this season, pro. 14 points a night, 8.5 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 59.2 field goal percentage. He leads all guards in rebounding and field goal percentage, pro, in the league. Useful, useless.
That's useful. It's useful. I mean, he's a stat stuffer in a good way. Like he's not a guy who's going to drop you 20, but he's going to have like 3 steals. He's going to have 7 rebounds. He's going to block a shot or 2. He's always been a good player. But yeah, I say definitely. I would say definitely a useful stat for sure. What do you think?
Yeah, useful. I think perfect fit for that roster. Doesn't need the ball, can play off the ball, goes and gets, he's a big time offensive rebounder for a guard, gets you extra possessions and just does all the little things. So good to see him up there. I played with him a year in LA and just plays the game the right way. So they're definitely using him well. All right, the Pistons are now up to 9 wins for the season, pro. It took them till the end of February to get 9 wins last season. Useful or useless?
Who's that, folks?
The Detroit Pistons. They're up to 9 wins for the season. They didn't hit 9 till February, late February last season. So they're already ahead of the curve.
I mean, I'd say useful. I mean, look, they didn't have Cade Cunningham for the year, and they didn't have Tobias Harris, but and they brought in Malik Beasley. But yeah, I would say it's useful. Even though they did have an influx of players come in, but I mean, shout out to what they're doing. JB Bickerstaff does a really good job. He's on top of things. He's sort of, I love him. He's a really good coach, and it seems like they're playing hard. They play hard for each other, and that's a team that you said they were going to have a sort of a big rise in their wins and where they fall in the league. So, great job by you, Nostra Bogus. I think you call yourself.
Yet. Still early.
Yeah.
Still early. I think they're in 10 right now. But they're playing,
it's
they're
good.
playing good basketball. They're playing good basketball.
Yeah.
They're playing much better, and they look somewhat organized. They've got a nice mix of youth and veteran. They're not going to win championship, obviously, but they get a play in. That's a really successful year. So, all right, pro, last one. So not so much useful or useless, but give me who you think are the best assist combos in the league. Meaning, player A passes to player B. Which combo would have the most in the league? Or give me some guys. I'll see if they're on this list.
Let me see. Give me a second. Standings here. I'm gonna say.
So if you get one right, I've got 12 on my list here.
All right, I'm gonna say
11 on my list.
Drew Holiday to Jason Tatum.
No, that's a terrible one, pro. Jason Tatum.
Yeah,
he's not.
Assist guy.
You got to go pick and roll guy, man.
All right.
Tatum's not setting a lot of screen rolls for Drew.
Luka Doncic and not Gafford, but who's the starting 5? Oh, Derek Lively.
No, he's not on there. Luka's not on there. I don't think he's played enough. But number 1 is James Harden and Ivica Zubac. They're the number 1 assist combo in the league. James Harden is on 3 of these in the top 11. He's also got James Harden and Derek Jones Jr., and then he's also got James Harden and Norman Powell. Number 2, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson. Number 3, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Chris Paul and Wemby are on there. Josh Giddey and Vucevic are on there. Halliburton, Siakam, Melo Ball and Brandon Miller, Brunson and Towns, and Halliburton and Turner. So just an interesting one. Just seeing that it's James Harden and seeing him in 3 out of the top 11 goes to what I said in the preseason. His usage has just gone up so much because they're missing stars and everything's going through him, and he's doing a good job. And the Clippers are playing good basketball right now. So useful, useless list, bro. Surprised he didn't get one. And Drew Holiday and Tatum, man.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. I thought you meant, my bad. I was just thinking about guys passing each other and just scoring. Of course, that's an assist. But I just, Yeah, I was just shocker. My head was in a different spot on that. So yeah, the Zubac thing is interesting though. The Zubac and Party for sure.
I mean, big roll guy shoots a nice little floater or half hook. So Harden's great at getting big, easy buckets. We saw it with Capella and Dwight Howard in Houston. We've seen it in numerous periods of his career. He gets bigs a lot of 2 or 3, 4 easy dunks a game. So that will continue. Fact or fake news, Pro? What do you got?
Folks, so Trae Young is averaging, at the time, was averaging 12.2 assists a game, which is the highest in 30 years since John Stockton in 94. Do you consider Trae Young a top 5 point guard in the NBA? He is a top 5 point guard in the NBA. Fact or fake news?
Oh, so you got Steph, you got Donovan Mitchell, Drew Holiday's going to be in there. Chris Paul, no, not anymore. What else do you have as point guards? Give me some other point guards, bro.
Shea Alexander, Kyrie Irving, Maxey, Halliburton.
No, fake news.
Yeah.
No, not top 5. Look, I think he's having a decent year, numbers wise, but I just don't see him as a top 5 point guard. No.
Yeah, I say fake news. I got Doncic, Shea Alexander, Curry, Irving, Brunson, Maxey, Halliburton, Lillard, Morant, and Fox ahead of him. I think that Trae Young's a good player. He scores, he puts up numbers. I don't see him as a winning player like that, in my opinion. Shoots 39% from the field this year. I mean, he's not, it's funny in the draft, in the Luka draft, scouts loved him. He put up points, put up numbers at Oklahoma, and they compared him to Steph. Small guy, shoots 3.
Yeah.
But he's not really a 40% 3-point shooter. He's nowhere close to it. He's somewhere probably sort of in the mid 30s, low 30s.
Takes a lot of bad ones, though.
Takes a lot of bad shots. Look, he throws assists. He's got some IQ. He could pass the ball. But to me, it's just the low percentage of efficiency. And that's where I think young players got to understand. They got to understand you got to be efficient as well. You got to generate points for yourself and your teammates. You got to take good shots. Yeah, you're going to take tough ones at the end of shot clocks and game clocks, but you have to be an efficient player. And I think that's one thing Trae Young really hasn't been able to master, is being efficient. One of those guys that could shoot 45, 46% from the field, shoot 38, 39% from 3. I was reading the stat. I mean, shout out to Ty Jerome for Cleveland Cavs. The guy's putting up, how about this, folks, for a point guard? 57.8% from the field, 52% from 3, and 88% from the line. Like that, I mean, obviously that's an anomaly. That's almost 50, 40, 90.
We had that game the other night, right, where he just couldn't miss, right? Didn't he hit 9 or 10 threes the other night?
Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of really good games. But all right, back to Trae Young. It's just, to me, I just think that, to be an elite, like Brunson, right? Brunson, it doesn't do it alone, but Brunson takes that Knicks team and takes them on his back and does some astonishing things with them last year. And again, he comes back this year and doing the same thing as far as what he's doing at that position, not just for stats, but also putting those guys in position to win. I get it. Atlanta Hawks' roster hasn't been great, but they've had some good rosters, throughout his tenure there, and he just sort of hasn't been able to put it together. Look what Halliburton did. I mean, without Halliburton, that team last year doesn't do nearly as good as they did going to a conference final, last year. So that point guard position is so important in putting yourself in position to win. But I thought that was a pretty interesting stat, though. The highest assist total so far per game in the last 30 years. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And pace of play. I mean, if John Stockton played in today's era, he'd be a 15 assist guy, especially with that pick and roll and with the amount of possessions. I missed out on Aussie of the week, so you're going to pick it this week, Pro, and take this very seriously, because a lot of times you just rattle off and make a quick gung-ho pick, all right? So I'm going to give you 3 guys, because I can't pick it.
Sure.
It's very, 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 very close this week, sorry. I'm not going to give you the names, all right? This player is averaging 10 points a game, 2.25 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.25 steals, 49% on 3 for the season. 49% for 3 on the season, but the numbers were for the week as far as his 10 to 1-on-1. This player is averaging 9.5 points, 4.6 rebounds, 7.3 assists, and 1.6 steals. And this player is averaging 11 points, 5.7 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 2.25 steals, and 1.6 blocks.
Oh, I'll go with the last guy.
Last guy, that is Dyson Daniels. He gets his third Aussie of the week. I couldn't decide. Josh Giddey was 9-4. Josh Giddey was 9-4 and 7. Numbers have gone down a fair bit. And Josh Green was the 10 points a night with 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 49% on 3 from the year. So shooting the ball really well. He's kind of etched out that starting spot too. So he's kind of solidified that, which is nice to see.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He had a really good game the other night. And they were sort of, they're sort of giving him some praise. Yeah. And look, he's a player that's sort of, figuring it out. It's really hard, especially coming from where he came from. Like he was playing from a really good team in Dallas, and then he gets traded, and you got to figure some things out. And look, Charlotte's, in a better spot than they've been. They're trying, new GM, new coach, and they're trying to do some new things there, and and they got like this mass grave of players that he's got to work his way out of and climb himself out of to become a starting player, or a player that could consistently play the rotation. I mean, 27 minutes a game, 7.5, points a game for the year. That's nothing to, that's nothing to sleep on. I mean, the guy's shooting close to 50 from 3, only shooting 61 from the line. So hopefully he'll do better with that. But I mean, he's carved himself out a nice little niche there. So, played 90% of his games. That's a pretty good clip.
And he's got the best player, generally guarding, much like Dyson Daniels, Josh Green guarding, they're guarding the best player, the best guards on the other team. So they, to get some offense out of that as well, like Dyson Daniels, for instance, is important. They get the stopper role. So, all right, pro, off to the NBL, so you can now log off and go and enjoy the rest of your day.
Great job, guys. Hey, keep it up. Keep our Australian fans happy. I mean, come on, we got
to figure out how to share the Instagram post finally after 2 years. By the way, producer Caleb is really pumped about that. The big button that says accept to link it to your profile. You finally figured out how to push it.
I barely ever check that, folks, but yeah, I'll check it more and more. So, because you shared some shit with me for like 3 weeks ago, but yeah, I'll start going with it. All right,
brother.
So,
see you next week.
All right.
All right, off to a quick NBL wrap. A lot of good games this weekend, a lot going on. Some absolute big nights from a few players around the league, but we'll start with New Zealand. They had a really rough weekend. They got absolutely whacked by Illawarra and Perth. Perth, they made it a bit more respectable, but they had a rough one. Taco Fall debuted against Perth. Looked okay. I think did his ankle or did something in that game, so I'm interested to see how that all goes, but did not look good. I mean, they had him playing the plug position, meaning off the ball, wasn't up in pick and rolls, and Bryce just had a field day. Bryce goes for 59. Absolute historic night for him. Just when he gets in those moods and they give him 20-odd free throws, gets his eye in, very tough to stop. One of the best scorers we've ever had come to this league, especially when he's in one of those moods. Perth go 2-0, and Perth, it's notable the pace of play they're playing at is fast. It is very fast. They're scoring in the hundreds consistently now. They're really getting up and down the floor. I think their defense was a bit of an issue last season, and their rebounding was an issue. That doesn't matter if you're scoring 100, especially in the NBL in a 40-minute game. The numbers they're putting up and their pace and tempo of play. I mean, John Riley's taken a lot of flack by Wildcats fans. I mean, he's been part of the transition from the old era of Gleason and morphing into what they are now. So it hasn't been an easy road for him, but they're playing a nice style of basketball and they're getting up and down the floor. So they're going to be a tough beat coming into the tail end of the season. Tassie get a shorthanded Adelaide, and credit to Adelaide. They fought. I mean, they're missing Trez and Davis, obviously, back over in the US, waiting for their suspensions to come up. Real interesting seeing some of the younger guys from Adelaide come in and just give effort. I mean, they played pretty deep, and I think they should be commended the way they played, short-handed. And Tassie getting a big win, getting healthy. I think they're going to make the 6. I think they really are. I'm not sure who comes out, but I think they're going to make their way in there. They just grind you to death, and if they stay healthy, if they can get their health back now and keep these guys on the floor, I think they make the 6. Sydney sneak by Cairns, and almost full strength Cairns. I think they're just missing one import. They're going to be a tough beat if healthy. I think especially up there. We got lucky. The Sydney Kings did getting out of that game with a win. I think this weekend for the Kings was a goal going into it, you always want to win every game, but you know, if you got your maths hat on, 1-1, 2 road games against a pretty much fully fit Cairns bar one guy, and then a tough Melbourne United, you take 1-1, but they win the Cairns game. They take a loss in Melbourne, which was a horrible first half, lack of effort, lack of energy, lack of intensity, coming out and giving, you know, Chris Golding basically walk up threes to get his eye in early. He just killed us. I think he finished with 28 points. Was unbelievable that game. Bull Coral goes out with some knee issues, couldn't move after 3 minutes, didn't help our cause. And then to credit the Kings in the third and the fourth, they made it again. They got it back from 16 points to an even game. And then a late game possession cost us. Jalen Adams gets a rebound, walks the ball up the floor. We have a chance to take the lead with, I think, 25 seconds left. Talking to Gorge to get a play, and I'm just yelling at the TV, get the ball over half court, get the ball over half court. I'm sitting there with my wife, and I could just see what was going to happen. You know, by the time we got the ball, there was about 20 seconds left on the shot clock, so maybe a quick clock there, who knows? But you know, 3 or 4 seconds, and just the pace Jalen was walking to get that ball over the court, trying to get a play from Gorge. And you know, I look at the Kings bench of players and coaches. Someone there has to be yelling, get it over, get it over, get it over. That would be generally me if I was on that bench, because I'm always notorious with guards that kind of like to toe the line about getting over just when it hits 15, or just when it's about to go from 16 to 15 for your 8-second count. Pet peeve of mine, just get the bloody ball over. Costs a possession. Who knows if we make that shot, but it gives us an opportunity to take the lead. And credit to Melbourne United. They're a tough outfit, and they're probably the championship favourite at this point in the season. Illawarra's been a little up and down, but I like Melbourne because they've got veterans, they've got youth. They've got scorers, and they play defense, so they're a tough beat. So that's a big one there. Illawarra then go from pounding New Zealand. They fly back to Australia, and they take a loss to Southeast Melbourne. So a pretty impressive win for Southeast Melbourne there, and getting a nice little dub, which then leaves the ladder in a position where Melbourne are leading 11-4, Illawarra 8-5 in second, and then the rest is pretty tight. 7-5 for New Zealand, 8-7 for the Kings, 8-7 for Perth. Kings only up by percentage. 6-6 for Adelaide, and then you got Southeast Melbourne and Tasmania both tied on 6-8. I think you can probably put a line through Brisbane at 4-7. I mean, it'd take a lot for them to make a play-in, but you know, a 3-game win streak, they get to 7-7, they could sneak into a play-in, but I just don't see it. And Cairns, I think they'll get some more wins. I just don't think. I think starting 3-10, it's a long way back. They basically need to be flawless to make a play-in. I think a sixth position in the NBL, as I said, I think will be a game or two below 50% or 500. So I think something along the lines of 12 wins will probably get you sixth spot as of now. Maybe 13 wins the way things are going. So it will be interesting to see, and a lot of big games coming up this weekend. Just touching on the suspensions for Adelaide, I don't want to label the point too much, but I thought the suspensions were not right. I think the fact just when they broke down what each indiscretion got as per the code, Montrezl Harrell for a slap and a punch, albeit it wasn't a king hit, but it was a punch, clear on replay, slap, clear on replay, didn't get suspension terms for those two things, just got a fine. Horrible precedent. If I'm any other team in the league that has a player going to an altercation for a slap or a punch, I'm sending in that video and saying, we'll take that penalty, thank you very much. So he gets 3 games total, but it was all from engaging with the crowd. Davis gets 2 games. They've suspended one fan for life, the other one for 10 years. If they've found that lifetime ban, I've heard they still haven't got a name or couldn't find the guy. So hopefully they found that. But I think a bit lenient, and now sets a precedent. You know, like I said, United very lucky. David Barlow coming off the bench, assistants come off the bench. He should have probably got a game. Ely should have got a game for third man in. They got nothing. So it will be interesting to see how that goes when there's another. Because eventually, whether this season or next season, there's going to be some more scuffles. There's going to be a fan indiscretion. There's going to be all kinds of different things that happen over the course of the season and next season. It will be interesting when you have this as a case study to suspension. So. We'll watch that space, but that's all the NBL news. Some big games coming up this weekend. Get out to a game. I know the school holidays are coming up. If you've got kids, it's a wonderful product to take locally, especially when there's some rivalry games going on. I know the Sydney Kings have a lot of games coming up in January, which is generally the time that we get 13, 14, 15,000 people coming out. So get in early and buy your tickets for those games and support local basketball. We'll see you all next week.